highly successful young mother with a flourishing nursing career has gone missing, leaving her family devastated. What happened to Cory Key? What happens when love becomes fatal? This is the Fatal Attraction Podcast with a key witness.
She was a hardworking mother on the verge of achieving her dreams.
She continued her education and she received her LPN license.
She rose to the occasion.
She was succeeding in life.
She'd been successful in love, too.
They were going to get married.
He's there for the family. He's a part of her life.
But before she can celebrate her success, a killer crashes the party.
Her friends and her plan a wonderful trip to Ontario.
She never made it.
Her father found her body.
There was a large amount of blood in the tub and around the scene.
Was this a random attack, born of opportunity?
She lived in a high crime area.
She was ambushed right there in the garage. Maybe there's a predator out there.
Or had he been there all along?
He had become obsessed.
Wait, what?
It was eating away at him.
He's not stable.
She's so afraid of him.
If someone says they're going to kill you, believe them.
July 31st, 2004. It's a warm Saturday evening in Toledo, Ohio, a Rust Belt city on the eastern end of Lake Erie.
It's right by the Great Lakes and pretty much a blue-collar, hard-working town.
The nickname of Toledo that I've heard since I've grown up here is Little Detroit. And there's a lot of commonality between those two cities.
And like its larger neighbor, Toledo also struggles with high crime.
Toledo kind of experienced what a lot of Rust Belt cities experienced, which is crime began to rise in Toledo.
There were some violent years. They've had an increase in crime, just like most major cities in the country.
The rising crime rates are in the back of one worried Toledo resident's mind as he lets himself into the home of his daughter, 26-year-old Cory Key.
Several people had called and received no answer from Cory.
Cory not responding to their calls would have automatically sent alarm because it was just not like her.
Cory, it's your dad.
The dad becomes worried, so he goes to her home.
Especially since he knows Cory had big plans that weekend.
Her birthday is approaching. Her birthday is August 2nd.
She was going to go on a trip with all of her girlfriends, and no one can find her.
Cory, you home?
Not far inside, he immediately senses something is wrong.
When he entered, he smelled the odor of gas.
What is going on?
He hears running water.
Cory, is that you?
But once he finds the source of the running water, Cory's father makes a horrifying discovery.
She was on her stomach in the tub and it was filled with water.
There was a large amount of blood.
She was not moving and she seemed to be unresponsive.
Oh my God. It's my daughter.
Cory's father wastes no time calling 911. But is it already too late? 26-year-old Cory Key was an inspiration to everyone that knew her.
She aspired to do great things. She had a bright future ahead of her.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
Hey, Cory.
Everyone loved her. She had a very close friendship circle. She was very close with her family.
With the loving support of her family and friends, Cory had overcome every obstacle in her path, including becoming a single mother when she was just 18.
Cory had unexpectedly gotten pregnant during her senior year of high school.
There The relationship with her child's father hadn't worked out. And while he did still help her care for the child, he had gone off to play college basketball.
Getting pregnant in high school, obviously for anyone, is going to be a challenge. But that didn't seem to stop Cory.
She continued on, she graduated.
Life as a single mom hadn't held Cory back either.
She eventually went on to take courses at a community college.
Cory decided she wanted to become a nurse because she knew it was a solid profession that would allow her to support her son.
Cory was well on her way to a thriving nursing career, but she still felt like something was missing.
She longed to meet someone she could share her life with. But between raising her child and going to school, Cory didn't have much time for romance.
That is until she met 31-year-old Damian Bowles, and she began to think maybe she could make time in her life for the right relationship.
He was older and seemed to be a little bit more mature. He owned his own business.
He seemed to be successful.
There's that instant spark. He's everything that she's looking for.
It would make sense that Cory would be attracted to someone who also seemed goal-oriented.
Cory and Damian took things slow at first, but fate had other plans.
It was a light, casual relationship, fun, energetic, nothing really serious, until she became pregnant with Damian's child.
In the spring of 2001, Cory and Damian welcomed a baby boy into the world, and along with her other son, they became a family.
Damian, he's there for the family. He's a part of her life. They move in together. They're living a life as husband and wife in essence.
But after 2 years together, the pressures of supporting a family and building a career started to take a toll on Cory and Damian's relationship.
She got a job at a Toledo hospital as a licensed practical nurse and started setting her sights on the next steps, doing the coursework that she would need to become a registered nurse.
She aspired to do so many things, and it appeared that she was leaving him behind.
Damian was really jealous of Cory. He was jealous of the fact that she was getting her education.
As Cory's career continued to rise, her relationship with Damian continued to deteriorate. And by April of 2004, he'd moved out.
In spite of the breakup, Cory and Damian were determined to stay on good terms with one another for their child's sake.
As always, Cory didn't let the setbacks stop her.
She had her own income, and she did have support of family and friends.
She was a great mom and was determined to give her kids the best life, whether she had a man by her side or not.
By the end of July, Cory was ready to make another fresh start by planning a girls' trip for her upcoming birthday.
So her friends and her plan a wonderful trip to Ontario. They're going to a casino right across the water from the city of Detroit. They're happy, they're excited.
She was leaving her kids with her mom for the weekend, and she was just going to have a fun, carefree time as a newly single woman.
But now, on the day they're supposed to leave, Cory's father has just discovered his daughter unresponsive in the bathtub of her home.
It's my daughter. I think she's dead. There's blood everywhere.
Her father reported that she had been shot.
But is that really what happened? When officers first arrive at the scene moments later, they're not entirely sure.
Cory had apparently bled out in the tub. Officers thought they could be dealing with a suicide.
Although after examining Cory's body, detectives rule out both a gunshot wound and a suicide.
It appears she was stabbed underneath the arm.
This was intentional.
Cory Key had been murdered.
Is the predator on the loose? Stay tuned as detectives get one step closer to solving this shocking crime. Tune in for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
After a recent breakup, single mom Cory Key was ready to make a fresh start and celebrate her upcoming birthday with her closest friends.
She had planned with her friends to go on a short vacation and just have a good time.
This is a time for her to get away, enjoy her friends.
Instead, on the day Cory was supposed to leave town, officers have responded to a 911 call at her house.
The call came in from her father as a person shot.
But further investigation reveals that isn't the case.
She had been stabbed, and she also had bruises on her body. This was a very violent, brutal attack.
She suffered blunt force injury to her head, lacerations to her face.
But there was no knife anywhere near the scene.
When homicide detectives arrive, they hope the killer has left behind some physical evidence. But based on the scene, that doesn't seem likely.
If water is mixed with DNA, then it makes it almost impossible to get a sample.
Recovering DNA from underneath Cory's fingernails will likely be a challenge, too.
Her nails were clipped. They were cut very low.
While Cory's body is transported to the coroner's office for an autopsy, detectives begin examining the rest of the house.
Though she's in the bathtub, there's blood on her bed, on the mattress, on the sheets. So they determined that, in fact, she was killed there and the body was taken to the bathtub.
The question that police had to ask at that point is, was someone trying to cover up evidence?
Based on what else detectives find at the scene, they determine they're lucky to have any evidence left at all.
The gas was left on in the stove. The door to the stove is left open.
Someone not only turned on the gas in the house, but lit candles in what was an obvious attempt to destroy the scene.
This definitely would have concealed the fact that Cory had been murdered.
Luckily for detectives, the candles had burned themselves out before the gas could build up inside the home and spark a fire. Once they finished an initial survey of the scene, detectives turned to Cory's father in hopes of learning more about their victim.
I'm terribly sorry about your daughter, sir, but can you answer a few questions?
The sight of his daughter there lying dead, it's just amazingly sad, just absolutely devastating for him.
Although still distraught, Cory's father tells detectives that his daughter was supposed to be celebrating her upcoming birthday.
Cory had plans to go out of town with her girlfriend, so she was preparing for her trip.
Do you know when she and her friends were planning to leave?
Yeah, they were supposed to leave this morning, but they went out here in town also last night because she didn't have her kids with her.
The night before, she had dropped her kids off at her parents' house because they would be babysitting them while she was away.
They go out, they have dinner, they're very excited about their plans for the weekend.
About 10:30 p.m., Cory left the girls and went home. They had plans to meet up the next day.
But the next morning, Cory wasn't answering her phone.
Her friends had tried several times to get in contact with her. No one could reach her.
Cory's dad said that after her friends called him, he tried to reach Cory, and when he couldn't, he went to the house then himself to check on her.
I've got a key, so I went in. And that's where I found her.
Detectives next ask Cory's father about her personal life.
They want to know of any enemies that she had, especially if he knew of a relationship that she had that may be a little rocky or may not be on the best terms right now.
He says that Cory was in a relationship with a man named Damian.
He's the youngest boy's father, but I don't think they see each other anymore.
Cory's father told police that they had broken up a few months prior.
He said that as far as he knew, the two had stayed on pretty good terms since the breakup for the sake of their son.
What about her other child's father? He's still around?
Yeah, he keeps in contact, but he's overseas right now.
Cory's older son's father played professional basketball in an international league.
So Damian, do you have his phone number?
Yeah, he called me earlier today.
Damian had reached out to him to see if he had seen Cory.
Damian had also tried several times to reach Cory, but he was unsuccessful.
He seemed worried about her.
Despite that, though, detectives will still need to talk to him in order to rule him out.
When a woman is the victim of a homicide, the man in her life is the next person you want to interview.
However, before reaching out to Damian, detectives expand their search to the home's detached garage and uncover a chilling scene.
Once they get to the garage, they notice that Cory's car door is open and that all of her belongings from her purse are scattered about.
It appears she was ambushed right there in the garage.
A scene like that, an investigator would always think of the possibility that a sexual assault had occurred.
Is the predator on the loose? Stay tuned as detectives get one step closer to solving this shocking crime. Tune in for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Detectives investigating the murder of 26-year-old single mother Cory Key are trying to determine if she was the target of a sexual predator.
It looks like someone was waiting for her, waiting to attack her.
She was ambushed right there in the garage.
It appeared that she had maybe wrestled with someone.
Maybe there's a predator out there.
At that point, they had to investigate to find out if there was a sexual assault involved.
Hoping for a lead on any suspicious activity in the area, detectives turned to Cory's neighbors.
The next step in an investigation of this nature would be to canvass the neighborhood to find out if they saw anything.
It's not as easy as one would think. This is a high crime district. Neighbors aren't always willing to speak to you out of fear that the person who did this will come after them.
But thankfully, the woman who lives next door is able to give detectives some helpful information.
The next door neighbor heard the dog barking in the early morning hours, about 1 o'clock in the morning, and then she actually heard a woman scream.
She also says she may have actually seen the intruder earlier in the evening.
Cory's neighbor told police that around 10 o'clock that night, she noticed that someone was at Cory's house on the outside messing around with her window.
Someone had attempted to break into the home.
She was not able to identify who that person was that was tampering with the window.
But she says she did see the person walk away from the house, get in a car, and drive away.
She couldn't make out a license plate.
She said she couldn't tell anything about the car, other than it was some sort of dark-colored sedan.
Did you call the police?
No, but I told Cory.
You talked to her?
Yeah, when she got home.
A neighbor, in fact, did speak with Cory around 10:30, 11 o'clock on that night.
She said when she saw the lights come on, she went over, knocked on the door, and told Cory what she saw.
The neighbor's information takes detectives by surprise.
Initially, police thought that Cory was attacked in her garage after she had arrived home from dinner.
Now police are confused because Cory, in fact, made it home safely. She's inside her home.
You talked to her?
And then at least 2 more hours passed before she started hearing screaming.
What happened in the 2 hours before she was killed?
Between the scene in the garage and the reported screams at 1 a.m., it seemed that Cory must have left and come back. But why?
Hoping to get a better sense of Cory's last hours, detectives reach out to the 2 friends she'd had dinner with on the night of the murder.
They've gotten information from Cory's father that Cory was last seen with her close friends, Myra and Tasha.
Detectives ask both women to come to the station for formal statements. Myra Hodges arrives first and confirms that she, Cory, and Tasha had gone out that Friday night.
They had had dinner and everything was good. Everyone was happy.
We didn't stay long since we had to leave for Canada in the morning.
She left roughly around 10:30, and that coincides with what the neighbor said, that Cory returned home somewhere around 10:45 to 11 o'clock that night.
Myra says shortly after arriving home herself, though, she received a panic call from Cory.
She actually got a call later that evening around 11:30 from Cory.
Wait, what?
Cory calls her and tells her that the neighbor came by and told her that she saw someone break into her home.
Where are you?
Cory was scared enough that she had actually driven to another nearby friend's house and called Myra from there.
I kept asking her, was she okay? She said she was, but I think something was wrong.
Myra could tell that Cory was very shaken up, that she was very upset and very scared.
Do you know if the intruder got inside?
I'm not sure.
Nothing was missing, so Cory didn't think that she had been robbed.
Despite that, Myra says she'd urged Cory to spend the night at her friend's house.
Myra pleaded with Cory, do not go back to your home. She was scared for her safety.
But according to Myra, Cory insisted that she'd be okay.
Cory tells her, I want to check on things, I want to get things in order.
Myra said Cory also told her she needed to finish packing for their trip. So even though she was nervous for her friend, she eventually let her go.
There have been other break-ins in the neighborhood, and I think she maybe minimized it because of the neighborhood.
But Myra tells detectives that she's convinced this was no random neighborhood crime.
I think I know who did it.
Is the predator on the loose? Stay tuned as detectives get one step closer to solving this shocking crime. Tune in for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Myra Hodges has just told Toledo detectives she suspects she may know the person who murdered her friend, 26-year-old Cory Key.
She tells the police, you need to look at Damian.
Damian was her ex, who had moved out at the end of April, about 3 months before the murder.
But Myra says things had changed between them long before that.
After Cory and Damian moved in together, that's when their relationship began to take a turn.
Cory was working hard to achieve her goals. And according to Myra, Damian was starting to resent all the time that Cory devoted to things other than him.
She was a professional. She was an LPN. She was succeeding in life.
And in his jealousy, he belittled her. He would make her think that if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be able to do any of the things that you've done.
When Tasha Johnson arrives at the station, she details for detectives how Damian's verbal abuse wasn't the worst of it.
She said he became controlling. He really started to isolate her from her loved ones.
Did you personally ever see him be violent with Cory?
No, but he was violent with me.
Tasha tells them about an incident that occurred in April, shortly before the breakup.
They're at a bar. Damian and Cory, they argue. Tasha takes Cory home. Now, when Tasha returns back to the bar, she sees Damian and he says to her, I am gonna go back and beat her ass.
Tasha says she was worried about what Damian might do, so she followed him back to Cory's place.
She goes to the door. Damian actually answers the door. And at that point, Damian curses her out and he actually punches her. He punches her, he slams the door.
Tasha had called the police.
When we get there, we see the injured girlfriend of Cory's on the porch.
She told me that her friend's boyfriend had hit her. I mean, she got hit pretty good.
Despite that, Tasha wasn't worried about herself. She'd called 911 out of concern for Cory.
She explained to us that Cory was in the house with him and she's not sure if she's safe.
Seconds later, the officers hear screams from inside the house.
The way she was screaming, he was hitting her or beating her.
Police, open up!
Normally, we don't kick indoors or attempt to kick indoors based on two people fighting. And this one was a life or death situation.
So my partner, Jason, tried to kick in the door.
Get back. I kicked the door 5, 6, 7 times, and it just wasn't going to go down. It was a steel frame door.
Eventually, Damian had opened the door.
Is there a problem, officer?
He was immediately put under arrest because of what we could hear from the outside. My thought that night was if we weren't there, she would not have been alive. He was going to kill her.
When we were rolling away from there, taking him to jail, for that moment, I felt okay that he was away from Cory and she had that support system of at least her friend at the time.
After the incident, Cory's friends say she had followed up with the legal system.
Cory files a police report for domestic violence, and she files for a PPO, which is a personal protection order against Damian.
He has no legal right to be around her, to come and get anything out of the house or have any kind of contact with her at all.
Now that Cory is dead, detectives have to wonder, did Damian stay away? Or was he the killer who had been lying in wait?
He gave me those bad vibes, like something wasn't right with him.
With all signs pointing to Damian as their suspect, they finally reach him and ask him to come down to the station.
Thank you.
They bring Damian in for questioning.
Once he sits down with detectives, Damian begins by explaining his complicated relationship with Cory.
Well, we had our ups and downs with this relationship.
They had a rocky relationship, sometimes off and on, but Damian tells them that they were getting back together.
It's a birthday weekend, and then the weekend after, we was going to Vegas to get married.
That sounded very different than what the police had been hearing.
Her parents knew they was getting married and stuff too? Hell no, that's the problem. She don't tell them what's going on, because they none of that side like me.
Detectives aren't entirely sure they believe him, but they can't dismiss his claim entirely.
Ending a relationship with an abuser is hard.
It was certainly not unheard of for someone to file a protective order, only to later reconcile.
Cory did have a child with Damian, which makes it very hard for her to cut all ties.
When's the last time you stayed there with her?
Thursday.
Thursday night into Friday morning.
Damian tells detectives he never saw Cory after he left her house Friday morning.
I called her. I couldn't get a hold of her.
When did you start trying to call her?
Somewhere around 9, little after
9 o'clock when?
At night. Oh, this was in the evening.
Damian says that when he couldn't reach Cory, he'd gone by her house.
When?
Right after, first time I tried to call her, somewhere around 9, 9:30, 10.
This was around the time the neighbor indicated that she saw someone break into her home.
Did you try and get in the house?
Nope, I tried to open the screen door, it was locked.
Did you try any of the windows or anything?
No.
You didn't?
Damian said he merely waited around a few minutes, hoping Cory might come back. Then he left.
Damian says that after leaving Cory's, he'd gone out for a few drinks.
He claimed he was at a bar in downtown Toledo watching a fight.
I was there from like around 10, maybe a little after, till just before 1.
That places Damian at a bar around the time that this murder would have occurred, which means Damian could not have done it.
That is, assuming he's telling the truth.
Come straight on there. Did you kill her, man? No, not at all.
He presents himself as very worried about the situation and worried about who has done this to Cory.
So who want to do anything to her, man, if somebody did something to her? I can't think of a single damn person.
All detectives can determine for now is that Damian doesn't appear to be their killer.
I actually went to that bar and spoke with the owner of the bar, and he said that he had arrived at, I think, 11 o'clock at night, watched this fight.
They question the manager, they question the bouncer, and they all say yes, that Damian was there at the bar.
After they checked out Damian's story, police had to start from scratch.
Is the predator on the loose? Stay tuned as detectives get one step closer to solving this shocking crime. Tune in for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Detectives investigating the murder of 26-year-old Cory Key believe they are on the verge of finding her killer.
Cory had been the victim of domestic violence in the past. There was some prior incidents with Damian Bowles.
So now the police have a possible suspect, right? This was someone who was violent against Cory.
But after bringing Cory's ex-boyfriend in for questioning, their investigation suffers a serious setback.
Damian has an alibi, not just an alibi, he has a strong alibi.
I can prove where I was at the bar watching the fight. From about 10 o'clock to 12:31, I was at the bar.
Damian told police that the night that Cory was murdered, they had been in a bar all night. They went to the bar, they talked with some people that had been there, and he had an airtight alibi.
They're back to the drawing board.
When detectives received the results of Cory's autopsy the following morning, it appears to rule out one other possibility.
They learned from the coroner's report that this was not a sexual predator. There was no evidence of a sexual assault at all.
And just as detectives feared, there are no traces of the killer's DNA under Cory's fingernails.
Your natural fingernails weren't cut way back. When you see something unusual like that, like the victim's fingernails being removed, it goes back to common sense. Someone took the fingernails off to try to destroy evidence.
It also suggests that person may have been no stranger to Cory.
This was someone who was not just intent on killing Cory, but making sure also that no one would ever find out who killed her.
So that makes you look even harder at the person you have as a suspect in a domestic dispute.
Was it possible Damian had slipped out of the bar without anyone noticing?
The bar had no type of video surveillance or anything like that.
Over the next several days, detectives talk more with Cory's friends and family, digging deeper into her relationship with Damian.
Several friends reported that Cory was fearful of Damian.
Most of the time when you hear about domestic violence relationships, they're kept very private. No one knows about it. You may suspect it, but no one really knows. It's not something that is done in public, it's done behind closed doors. But in this case, Damian was so violent, not only did he do it in front of others, he was also abusing Cory's friends.
The more witnesses we talked to, the more background we did, they all pointed at this individual.
They have a gut feeling that this is Damian, but they don't have enough evidence.
We didn't have an eyewitness seeing him leaving the scene of the crime. So there was a lot of circumstantial evidence, and you take these cases to trial, and you have to prove proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
As an investigator, there's a big difference in what you know and what you can prove.
Unwilling to risk an acquittal, detectives continue to work the case.
It was never abandoned. The case was never shelved and stuck in a drawer.
They tried everything they could. They put out a $5,000 reward to try to get information on who could have possibly done this, but unfortunately, they got no other information.
2 years go by. There's no new evidence to go on.
The case going cold really put the family in this state of limbo. It leaves them with not being able to move on or even grieve in the way that they could had she received the justice that they knew she deserved.
I was hoping and praying it wouldn't be cold forever.
In December of 2006, 2.5 years after Cory's murder, those prayers are finally answered.
We had a witness come forward.
The witness's name is Paul Brown.
He lived near Cory Key and was actually interviewed by police when they canvassed the neighborhood after her body was found.
There's some things I didn't tell y'all.
He knew that he had information that could potentially give Cory justice, and it ate away his conscience.
He actually heard the suspect threatening to kill the victim.
Paul was able to put Damian at the home when Cory was murdered.
Is the predator on the loose? Stay tuned as detectives get one step closer to solving this shocking crime. Tune in for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
More than 2 years after Cory Key's murder, a neighbor has finally come forward to tell police what he knows about the day she died.
Paul Brown told detectives that he had overheard a conversation between Cory and her ex, Damian Bowles, that sounded pretty threatening.
I seen her on the porch on the phone, and I can tell she was talking to Damian.
When was this?
This is about a week before she died.
She's on the phone at that moment with Damian, and she tells Paul, hey, he's talking about killing me.
Did you hear Damian say that?
Well, not directly, but I did see him the night that she died. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Paul was able to put Damian at the home when Cory was murdered.
Why did you wait 2 years to tell us this?
I'm scared.
After the victim had been killed, the suspect came back to him and threatened to kill him.
Paul says that's why he kept his silence for so long.
He knows that if Damian has killed Cory, he would kill him without question. He knew what he was capable of.
But after 2 agonizing years, he tells detectives he can no longer stay silent.
I think that having sat with that information for so long, it just ate away at him.
Paul's story is the missing piece that detectives need to make an arrest.
The police are satisfied that they have their killer.
2 long years after Cory's death, Damian Bowles is finally arrested.
For any policeman, it's a very satisfying feeling, and getting some justice for the victim.
Given a second chance to come clean, Damian initially plays dumb.
It's been 2.5 years. What do you think happened to her? That's hard to say because I don't know.
Damian basically repeated what he had told the police 2 years earlier.
Hey, I wasn't even at that home. I was away. I was at a bar.
But this time, the detectives know that's not true.
We've got your timeline, and there's a few little problems with it. Mainly, you're lying. And you know you're lying. You say so.
And when detectives confront Damian with the evidence they have against him, he remains defiant.
We had a witness seeing you leaving the house after they heard a woman scream. You're in trouble. Well, charge me with this girl on my way. I'll be down 6 months.
In July of 2007, 6 months after Damian made his prediction, he goes on trial for murder.
Prosecutors told the jury that Damian basically terrorized Cory. It got to a point that Cory kicked Damian out of the house and ended the relationship.
The most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is at the conclusion of a relationship.
But according to the prosecutors, it was Cory's plans for the weekend that pushed Damian over the edge.
This trip with her girlfriends was the ultimate sign of freedom for Cory. She was in control of her life again and felt like I can go and do things. I don't need him.
He's losing control, and that's what abusers don't want. At that point, he may have decided, I gotta do something.
Prosecutors believed that he went by her house, checked her doors and windows, but she wasn't home. So he left and started forming a plan.
While Cory was out with friends, Damian decided to go to a bar to establish his alibi.
He sat at the bar, he talked to people, and made sure that they saw him.
At some point while Damian was at the bar, Cory arrived home, where her neighbor told her someone had tried to break into her house.
She was scared, so she fled to a nearby friend's house and called Myra. But she eventually calmed down enough to return home.
In the meantime, Damian had quietly slipped out of the bar and made his way back to Cory's, where he hid in her garage.
She gets home, she parks in the garage.
You think you could just go off without me?
Damian, what are you doing here? Why are you in my garage with that knife?
She was ambushed.
He held her at knife point and forced Cory into the house.
He had violently assaulted the victim in the bedroom.
She was stabbed, she was thrown in a tub, she was left for dead.
He cut her fingernails. He turned on the gas in hopes of starting a fire or an explosion.
He also tried to intimidate the one witness who could put him at the scene of the crime.
That witness filled every gap there was.
It took him more than 2 years to come forward, but Paul Brown did take the stand as the prosecution's star witness.
Damian's defense basically tried to discredit the new witness.
But in the end, it only takes the jury 5 hours to reach a decision.
Damian's found guilty.
Damian had fooled a lot of people during his lifetime. He had convinced them that he was a good guy, a stable guy, but that day he did not fool the jury.
He is sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years.
Those who helped put Damian in prison hope that day never comes.
This guy went to extreme measures to terrorize this young woman and to kill her, and then extreme measures to get away with it. So I would hope they would take that into consideration if he comes up for parole and see fit to keep him in jail.
And none of them will ever forget Cory Key and her tragic death.
Cory did everything that she was supposed to do. She did it all right.
Cory, she tried to take all the proper steps.
She actually kicked Damian out of her home. She was moving on with her life.
And it just, didn't work out for Cory. It's heartbreaking.
It leaves that feeling with everyone. What could I have done? What could I have done differently to save her life?
It has become increasingly evident that sometimes cruel individuals will appear in disguise when it comes to matters of the heart. The untimely loss of a vibrant and compassionate young mother, Cory Key, who selfishly devoted her life to others, serves as a painful reminder of life's fragility. Coming up on the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
An unexpected payout gave them a fresh start in a new city.
He got a really substantial settlement.
They have very nice big house.
It was just a better living. It was quiet, it was peaceful.
But a single gunshot will shatter the illusion.
He had been shot execution style.
It was terrible.
An accident transforms the life of an ambitious man and his family for the better. However, deceit and evil soon follow, shattering the once picturesque life. What happened to John Stanley? Tune in to the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast. We will see you in the next episode.